back to the Ace of Rays podcast. My name is Tony, and let's just get right into it again because it is not going well for the Tampa Bay Rays. The last episode I made came out on July 7th, so not too far before this, but let's talk about the month of July as a whole. And that's going to be kind of the theme today is, last 7 games, particularly because that was the last time I filmed an episode, was right before a stretch of 7 games against Detroit and Boston. Um, and then we'll also talk a little bit about like what's going right for the Rays. Some of the things that they're actually doing correctly right now, some of the things that are going well for them. And there is some stuff that is going right for the Rays. So today I am going to talk about that and try to give you some hope while at the same time not brushing off how bad things have been lately. So let's talk about last week. The last time I made the podcast, like I said, came out on July 7th. Then they played 3 games at Detroit. Then they played 4 games at Boston. I was at one of those games. You will see that vlog on this channel in, I think, 3 days is when it's scheduled to come out. I can't remember for sure, but it will be coming out sometime in the next couple days or so. Actually, it'll be July 24th is when that vlog is coming out. So I do capture the walk-off. I went to the game on Friday. Yeah, that was a fun one. I was talking with some Red Sox fans on the train. Red Sox fans, by the way, are very nice people. Shockingly nice. Like, I've heard bad things about Boston sports fans. Red Sox fans, I mean, Boston is a baseball town, I've been told, and Red Sox fans were all really nice. Nobody was really being how do I say this in a kid-friendly way? Nobody was being really mean once the Rays lost in the style that they did. They weren't being mean during the game. Actually, a Red Sox fan came up to me after the game, and I was wearing my Devil Rays shirt and a Devil Rays hat, and was like, "I like it, throwback." So, and I also had some positive interactions with other Red Sox fans on the train ride there. And then, I wasn't denied service anywhere or anything. So I think it's really just New York where you run into issues. Yankees fans are kind of a pain, and Mets fans are as well. And then in Philly as well, depending on who they're playing. I mean, when I went to the Rays and Phillies game last year, I didn't get anything for that. And the Rays got blown out in that one. That was the game where Edwin Uceda forgot how to pitch, and he still doesn't know how to pitch, and we'll talk about that later. But I didn't really get anything from Phillies fans, and I wound up leaving also before Edwin Uceda hit, who was it, Nick Castellanos. So I really didn't get anything, which was good. Because, if you wear a Dallas Cowboys jersey in Philadelphia, whew, good luck for you. But no, I got Red Sox fans were really nice. Nothing like bad happened while I was there. I would be more afraid going to a Yankees game wearing this jersey. But they are really passionate fans of Boston. I'll say that too. So I also we joined in some chants. My mom came with me, and we joined in some chants of I'll give you the kid-friendly version. Screw the Yankees, which united everybody, and there were a fair amount of Rays fans there too. There were I saw at least like 20, 30 Rays fans there, and that's just from walking around. I mean, there were probably a lot more there. It was pretty loud when the Rays would score some runs, especially like around my area, third base dugout side. But yeah, you'll see the vlog in a couple days if you pay attention on this channel. Um, but yeah, let's get back to business. So they lost 2 of 3 against Detroit, and then they got swept by Boston, the Rays did. So they have lost since the last episode, in which I said they need to at least get 3 of 4 against Boston, and it doesn't matter what really happens in the Detroit series as long as they don't get swept. Well, they did lose 2 of 3 against Detroit, and then they didn't win a single one of the 3 games that I said they needed to win against Boston. As a result, they are now out of a playoff spot, which is where they were about 2 months ago to this point when they were on the outside looking in, when they looked pretty bad. But then they started to pick it up, and they gave us some hope. And they were doing really well. And I think at one point they were tied for the division lead. If not, they were at least half a game out of it. And that was not too long ago. That was like 2 weeks ago, maybe. Um, and then they started losing. And even though the Yankees started losing, the Blue Jays did not. And the Red Sox did not. And so as a result, the Tampa Bay Rays are now a game and a half behind the Seattle Mariners, who also are winning right now. The New York Yankees have won at times, have lost more often, especially recently, but they are still pretty far behind the Yankees as of right now because the Rays have just lost a lot more. So, going into the All Star break and now coming out of the All Star break, the Rays are a game and a half out of a playoff spot. What does this all mean? We'll talk about it. But first, I need to mention it again. I've said it repeatedly over and over. If the Rays put up 5 runs, I said this at the start of the season, if the Rays put up 5 runs every game or any game, they're going to win 80% of those games and make the postseason. They shaky bullpen and all. And the bullpen has been very shaky recently. Um, but the hitting has also not been there. They in the 12 games in July, they've put up 5 runs only 4 times. To my point, they've won 3 of those times. The one time they didn't was the Kevin Kelly blown save and the Garrett Clevenger walk off against Minnesota. Um, and so, you know, that's about as close to 80% as you can get with that. They're also 34-4 this season still when scoring 5 or more runs. That is a win percentage of 89.5%, so higher than the 80% mark that I predicted. And it's also still third in MLB in win percentage, behind Kansas City, who have only won 19 games when they put up 5 runs. Wow, that's incredible. Um, and the Toronto Blue Jays, who are 39-3 when their team puts up 5 or more runs. They also have really, really good pitching up in Toronto, and that's like been their strength the entire season. So, um, but yeah, Rays are 34-4 this season when they score 5 or more runs, and they've only done that 4 times in the last 12 games. That is not a winning recipe. So, why? Why are the Rays losing? Let's break it down. Let's get really specific and analytical because last podcast I did, I said, okay, you know what? It could be a slump. Let's not overanalyze. Let's just kind of accept the fact that the Rays are not doing so well at the moment. It could be just a blip on the radar. It could just be something small, but it also could be potentially devastating. It could be the start of going in the wrong direction. But there's no need to get analytical about it until it becomes a pattern. Well, now it's become a pattern. And getting swept by the Red Sox kind of proved that. Those were 3 1-run games, and then another game that they were in it until a late home run, seventh inning home run. Um, but again, not a game that they weren't in. Um, Talking about hitters, let's just start with the hitters because I know everybody wants to talk about the bullpen, but it's not just the bullpen that has been messing up or not doing as well as of recently. Yandy Diaz is batting 241 in his last 7 games. Looked like he did at the beginning of last season and at the beginning of this season. The Rays go about as far as Yandy Diaz goes. And when he was going really well, when he was on a hit streak and an on base streak, and he was hitting over 400 in a stretch of about 12 games or whatever it was, the Rays were winning a lot of those games. Now it looks, and I think part of the reason that this is the case is I don't know if he's dealing with an injury or something, but he does not run well at all. He has been like jogging to first, even on close plays. I mean, there was a play in that Red Sox series where Trevor Story has to go into the outfield to make a throw to get him at first, and that's a play that 99, well, 100 times out of 100 should be safe for the runner, no matter who's running. Could be freaking Bartolo Colon out there, and he would be safe on a play like that. Um, Jake Mangum would be running into right field by that point. He would be well down the right field line. He might even be at the fence by the time that throw got there. Yandy Diaz was out on that play. And that is sort of just an example of how slow he has been running as of late as well. There was another play where it was a double play where he wasn't really running hard to second, and it shouldn't have been a double play. It should have been a force at first. Shouldn't the throw shouldn't have even gone to second. Um, so yeah, should have been a you know a force for the runner at first, a fielder's choice. Um, Junior Caminero, another name. A lot of people are not very pleased with how he's been doing, so let's break that down a little bit. In his last 7 games, he's batting 179. In his last 15 games, he's batting 213. Not good at all. Very aggressive, too aggressive even. Um, it's not. I bring up the last 7 and then the last 15 because it's only been the last handful of games when he was named as a contestant for the home run derby. So you might look at that and say, okay, well, it's just because he's trying to, just hit home runs now because maybe he's a little cocky that he got named to the home or that he had the chance to participate in the home run derby. Um, but 213 in his last 15 games, that's just not good enough. Like, he is the superstar. He is the everyday third baseman and hopefully will be for 15 years. And you hope that it's just a slump, but he's just been too aggressive. Earlier in the season, when the Rays were winning, he would shorten up his swing and get to the ball and just put it in play. And a lot of the time, drive it down the line and wind up with a double. Jonathan Aranda does it all the time. He's been great the entire season up to this point. Um, he has not, Junior Caminero has not been doing that as of late. He has been swinging for the fences with every swing, and that is not the method in which you win baseball games. You've got to just think about putting the ball in play at the very least, and he's just been too aggressive. Brandon Lau, before getting injured, wasn't doing too well either. In his last 7 games, he was batting 238. Not good from the guy who is the de facto leader of this team. Jose Caballero has never really been good hitting wise for the Rays, but has been demonstrably worse in his last 15 games, in his last 30 games, whatever. I'll single out the last 15. He's batting 170 in those 15 games. Especially with Brandon Lau out of the lineup and Caballero kind of being the go-to second baseman. I know he's kind of splitting it with Taylor Walls, but one of them has been in the lineup every day, and they have to be in the lineup every day. The addition of Ha-Seong Kim was supposed to make that not a reality, but with Brandon Lau out, they don't really have a choice. Um, and Ha-Seong Kim being injured for the most part, and then being injured again, and then again. You've got to have one of Taylor Walls or Jose Caballero in the game. And Jose Caballero has been the guy at second base most of the time since Brandon Lau went out last week. And he's not, that's not a, regardless, even you would take the 238 batting average in the last 7 games over 170. That's a difference of 60, almost 70 points. Not good. Speaking of shortstops, Ha-Seong Kim, very hyped to return to the coming back into a major league lineup and then specifically making his first start as a Ray. Like I said, he's been injured now 3 times. He's been pulled from games twice, and his start for the Rays is a 227 average in 22 plate appearances. Only 22 plate appearances before the All-Star break. Josh Lowe hasn't had any impact on the Rays since 2023, but especially he's been worse as of late with a .077 average, which for all you math people out there, that's basically what that means is when he steps to the plate, he's only been getting a hit 7.7% of the time in his last 7 games, at least, balls in play. His average in July is a little bit better, but it's still only 167. Christopher Morel, guy that they traded for last year. Um, Gave up Isak Paredes for, who is now doing fantastic with Houston. Wasn't doing quite well with Chicago last year, but is doing great things now with Houston. They got Christopher Morel in return for the power game. Still really not doing any of that. He, in his last 7 games, he's got a 167 average and only 1 home run. Last year, around this time when the Rays got him, I think he had something like 20, maybe 30 home runs to this point. It was a lot. And he has 7 for the season thus far. He's also not the everyday guy in the outfield, but still batting 167 in his last 7 games, and his average over the course of the season is lingering around 200. So not good. But we got to give credit where credit's due. We've got to talk a little bit about the players who have been doing well for the Rays, especially as of late. The Rays entering this past offseason had 2 holes to fill, catcher and shortstop. And they came up with a solution, and those solutions have been mostly playing well. One of them wasn't necessarily the solution, but has kind of become that recently. Um, let's talk about the catchers first. Matt Thaiss, Danny Jansen. They've been playing well throughout the course of the season, but very well as of lately. Jansen, I hate the OPS stat, but when it's impressive, I will always mention it. His OPS is .900 in his last 7 games, and in his last 15, it's 815. Matt Thaiss as the backup, keep that in mind. Matt Thaiss as the backup is batting 250 in his time with the Rays. That's pretty good for a backup catcher. His OPS is 627, which is, again, good for a backup catcher. That's about as good as you can get. I mean, you're asking a lot from a backup catcher. Batting 250, being somebody who has been especially reliable as of late in terms of at least getting on base, that's what they needed. And last year, having Alex Jackson and Ben Rortvet, oof, that was hard to watch. But the catchers this year have been a little bit easier to watch. Over the course of the season, the averages are still for both of them below 250, but as of late, they've both been doing a lot better. And especially since Thaiss came over, he was batting 212 with the White Sox. Now he's batting 250 with the Rays. And then at shortstop, Hassan Kim was supposed to be the plug at shortstop, but he was injured for the start of the season, and then since he came back, has been injured twice more. Has left the game early 2 times. 227 average for him. Well, Taylor Walls in his last 7 games has quietly been batting 292, and I know he kind of cost the Rays the Saturday game in the Boston series, but he's been batting a lot better recently than he has historically been known for. His defense still holds pretty well. Um, Batting 292 in his last 7 games, slugging 417. So good for him. And then I've got to group them together, all 3 of them, the young guys, as I call them, the guys who really should be the people who I'm saying are trending downwards, because if they were the reason that the team wasn't playing as well, it would almost be like, okay, understandable. They're young. They haven't been in the league that long. I'm talking about Jake Mangum, Chandler Simpson, and Jonathan Aranda. If they were not doing as well, like I said, you would say, okay, point to that. Like, they're young. Give it a little bit of time. They'll get better. It's just a slump, whatever. They have been the 3 hottest hitters on the team. They have been the 3 most reliable players in the Rays lineup. Jake Mangum in his last 7 games has a 320 average. I've talked all the time about him over the course of the season. Any metric you look at, he's batting over 300, beating out a lot of weak infield hits. which is what he does. He gets on base. The problem is that nobody really drives him in. And Chandler Simpson, in his last 15 games, is batting 380. He's got a 12-game hit streak going on entering today. And then Jonathan Aranda has been having an amazing season. In his last 7 games, he's batting 414 with an OPS of 1.073. And again, don't like the OPS stat because it's just a number, that it's a collection of numbers. But when it's over 1,000, that tells you that that's a good thing, that he has been doing very, very well. Those three have been leading the way. They have been scoring most of the runs. They have been getting on base most of the time. Not a lot of times do they touch home plate because of who is behind them. But I think if you had the three of them at the top of the lineup, you may have scored more runs in the last week. Hindsight's always 20/20, but I never understood why the speedsters were batting so low in the lineup, especially when it's not just speed that they bring to the table, when they are also bringing on on base percentage and average, and in the case of Aranda, extra base hits. I don't get it. Finally, Chandler Simpson was batting leadoff in the game against Boston. Um, I don't understand why they don't do that more often. It does not make any sense to me. Seriously. Like, those are your three hottest hitters. I also don't understand how, like, last year, the Kevin Cash put the Rays lineup in a blender. You didn't know who was batting where on any given night. And it made sense because they couldn't hit last year. It doesn't make sense at all this year because one of the things that teams have done, especially recently, is stick a player in a position in the order and leave him there because then they know when their time is going to come up, when they're going to be batting, generally speaking, on any given night. And they don't have to worry about, oh, am I hitting leadoff? Am I hitting ninth? Am I hitting eighth, seventh? Anyway, like Chandler Simpson has probably played, I don't know, like 50 games, and he's probably batted every position in the order except cleanup. Like, what is going on? Just set a lineup and stick with it. Even if it's not doing the best, especially like at the start, I don't understand this year throwing the lineup in a blender when not every, like last year, nobody could hit at all except Brandon Lau at times, and late in the season, Johnny DeLuca and Yandy Diaz, um, and Josh Lowe a little bit. Just pick a lineup and stick with it because you have good hitters. So if you keep them in the same position every night, they're going to compete like they should. Like they're going to know when they're coming up. If you have a lineup of Mangum, Simpson, 1 and 2, not necessarily in that order, but maybe, Jonathan Aranda third, Yandy Diaz fourth, Junior Caminero fifth, and then you just go down the line, that is a good freaking lineup. And you just keep that. Or maybe you have Chandler Simpson ninth, like they did with Jose Siri, and they bring up Brandon Lau to the second spot. Okay, fine. Keep that lineup and do not stray from that. Like, ever. Like, find a lineup that works and then stick with it. Now, they had a lineup that works, where they were the best team in Major League Baseball over a given span of May into June. And then, it started going south. And then as a result, Kevin Cash threw the lineup in a blender, which it was already in a blender because you never knew where anybody was going to bat on a given night, even when they were winning. It doesn't make any sense. If you watch the Philadelphia Phillies or the New York Yankees or the Toronto Blue Jays, like the same guys, the guys that are doing the most damage are batting in the same spots every single night, night after night, over and over and over again. And they are having great seasons as a result. Look at Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge does Aaron Judge bats in the same spot every night. He doesn't jump from 9 to 1 to 5 to 3 to 2. He bats fourth I believe, third or fourth every night, every single night. And he is probably going to be the American League MVP. Aranda is your version of Aaron Judge. Put him in the 3 hole and leave him there forever for the rest of the season and hopefully for the next 15 years. Whatever. Moving on, let's talk about pitchers. And this one I want to kind of, I want to showcase some of the pitchers that are doing pretty good, especially as of late. Shane Baz has kind of stepped it up. Shane Baz was a guy who really struggled with command when he came back last year and then early this season as well. In his last 7 games, he's got an ERA of 3.02. The same is true about Zach Littell, 3.02 ERA. And Joe Boyle, since coming back up, has been fantastic. An ERA of 2.00, but on the season, a 1.29 ERA. That also dates back to his one start or his start in April. So those are the 3 pitchers that things are going well for. There's kind of a mixed bag in here with Taj Bradley, who in his last 7 games has an ERA of 6, but in July has an ERA of 3.09, which is okay. You live with that. Remember, Taj Bradley was the American League Pitcher of the Month last July before having an ERA over 10 in August. And then trending downwards. Drew Rasmussen. I don't understand the strategy with Drew Rasmussen, honestly. He was pitching consistently 5 innings, unless he's dealing with some sort of injury, in which case he should be on the IL with all the surgeries that he's had. Um, he was averaging 5 innings. Now he's the opener. Now he's throwing 2 innings before they give it to Joe Boyle. If you play it right, you don't need a bullpen for those games. You have Drew Rasmussen go 4, maybe 3, and then you have Joe Boyle come in and then he throws 5 or 6. You don't need to go to the bullpen in those scenarios. It's Drew Rasmussen should not be the opener. He should not be used the same way Ryan Stanek was, which it looks like is a direction that things are heading. He should be pitching at least 3 innings a game, unless he's dealing with an injury. And if he is, he should be on the IL, and Joe Boyle should be starting games because Joe Boyle is pitching very well. Um, and then Ryan Pepio, his ERA isn't quite horrible, but 3.76 ERA, but a whip of 1.2, and just a lot of untimely hits, home runs, stuff when you need him to shut it down, and they just give up. He just gives up too much when he shouldn't. Those are the starting pitchers. Now talking about the relievers. Who's trending upwards? Nobody. I'm only talking about consistent pitchers here. I'm not going to talk about like Paul Gervais or Ian Seymour, who should be on the roster till the end of the season, by the way. Ian Seymour is fantastic. He's been fantastic in the minors. He's been fantastic in the majors. Um, use him any way you want to use him, but he should be on the major league roster the rest of the season. Trending downwards in terms of the bullpen, in terms of the consistent relievers in the bullpen, the guys who have pitched 20 or more games throughout the season. Garrett Clevenger, 3.38 ERA in July, but it's gotten progressively worse since he had a 1.86 ERA in April. Every month, it's gotten worse. So trending in the wrong direction just by that metric. And also, untimely hits, walk-offs given up, giving up home runs that tie the game. Eventually, the team loses the game. Pete Fairbanks has a 5.40 ERA in his last 7 games. He blew games against the Athletics and the Red Sox. Kevin Kelly has an ERA of 6.23 in July. In his last 7 outings, it's still 4.5. Edwin Uceda had a great inning in 2/3 the other day, but aside from that, he's got an ERA of 9 in his last 7 games, 6.48 in his last 15, and then 8.44 in the 5 games he's pitched in July. So not good at all from any of them, especially considering this was a bullpen that threw a lot of innings in that Kansas City series in which the Rays gave up 1 run in 27 innings. including, two shutout games. What has happened to the bullpen? Clevenger, Fairbanks, Kelly, Uceda, they've been relying on some of the minor leaguers, the Durham players who have been kind of a mixed bag, like Paul Gervais, um, like Forrest Whitley, who they picked up from Houston. What has happened to the bullpen? It's just all gone bad quickly. And yet still, the Rays, in games where they score 5 or more runs, are 34-4. So they are not giving the bullpen any help. Anytime the bullpen comes into a game, it's high leverage. Anytime. Like, you need some games where you go up 6-0 in the third and you hold the lead, and the starting pitcher comes out in the seventh inning, before the seventh inning, or before the eighth inning, whatever it might be, and it's a 6-2 game, or 7-2, or 8-2, or 8-3, or whatever. You need a lead of 4 more runs, and then you turn to the bullpen, and you turn to your Kevin Kellys and your Edwin Ucedas and say, okay, just go out there and don't give up 4 runs. That is not the case. Anytime they go out there, it's a high leverage situation. You can't win a lot of games like that. Pressure gets to you, whether you like it or not. The Rays had the best bullpen in baseball until like 3 weeks ago, and now they have one of the worst bullpens in baseball. Mostly because, the collapse started before the game started really getting high leverage quickly. They did have the one game against the Athletics that was 6-2 that the bullpen almost blew. Um, you gotta you just need to score more runs and make everything not as impactful. How exhausting do you think it would be if you had to, go out there every day? Like, think about it this way. If you have to go out every day and, fight and claw for food to feed your family, and you come home at the end of the day and you're exhausted. You're going to be super exhausted and more tired every day you have to do that. Whereas, you know, you wake up in the morning and you don't know that whether it's going to be the case or not, but it's a good day. There was food on the doorstep this morning. Okay, great. It's a 6-2 game in the seventh inning. Ah, great. I get to go in, and if I give up a run or two, it doesn't matter. Still gonna win. 6-4. Okay, you don't love it, but you take that as opposed to coming in a 3-2 or 2-1 or 4-3 game every single game. That's just exhausting. That's got to be exhausting for the bullpen. They've got to find a way to just like explode for runs at times. The 7-3 game against Detroit, it was a great example of that. Like, they were able to hold that one because it didn't matter. They put up 7 runs. That takes a lot of the pressure off of the bullpen. More games like that. But when you're only putting up in 12 games this month, you're only putting up 5 or more runs 4 times. That's not going to help anybody. That just means that at least 8 of those games are going to be within Grand Slam territory, entering any given inning. Which is, the ability to score 4 more runs on 4 runs in an inning, which you can do with a Grand Slam. That's basically what that means. So let's talk about Devil Rays Advocate. Now, this is going to be basically like the actual definition of what Devil's Advocate is, where I kind of play both sides. Instead of, usually I'll just pick an unpopular opinion and then take the opposite side. Or, take a popular opinion and then take the opposite side of that. But for this one, I'm going to give you both sides. And then I'll tell you which one that I side more with. Are the Tampa Bay Rays overrated or are they underrated? Meaning, was the 1 month and a half that they were playing well just a stretch where they were just playing good baseball like any team has over a given season? Or was that indicative of what this team will be down the stretch and what they could become? Meaning they're underrated because people are kind of counting them out as of right now based on how they've played recently, especially getting swept in a 4-game series against Boston. The argument for overrated is that okay, they played fantastic for the span of about a month from mid-May to mid-June, but outside of that have played really poorly. The rookies and the young players are the ones that have been guiding the team, like I mentioned before, Aranda, Simpson, and Mangum, while the veterans like Josh Lowe, Yandy Diaz, even Brandon Lau to an extent, are the ones that are weighing the team down. And that signals that maybe it's time to start dipping into Durham, trading away some of these players, the veterans that haven't been doing anything as of recently, to clear room for a rebuild, um, which shouldn't take long, at least a rebuild of the hitting core and then maybe the bullpen as well. Although they have good relievers in the minors, so it shouldn't be. If there were a rebuild, I don't think it would be too long unless something went horribly wrong. Um, but the argument for them being overrated is that okay, it's the veterans. Trade away the veterans. Trade away Yandy Diaz and Josh Lowe. And give somebody like Trey Morgan a shot with the Rays to see if they can make the playoffs this year or next year, or at least just give him some major league experience. Trey Morgan is a guy for Durham who's batting 280 on the season. Really been fantastic for them. They also have a great outfield in Durham. Part of the reason why they're 20 games over 500 over the course of the year. They might not make the postseason because of the AAA's stupid rules. Um, but regardless, Durham has been playing great baseball, and that gives you some optimism at the very least. And a lot, some of that is rehab starts and whatever else, but not really for the Rays. I mean, the hitting has all been the players that have been there consistently. There haven't been a lot of rehab appearances from Rays hitters in Durham. Um, so, yeah, that's the argument for overrated. The argument for underrated is the Rays played a stretch of really good baseball, great baseball, since early May, regardless of what they were in that month span where they were 26-10 and had the best record in the majors. They had only lost 2 series between May 9th and June 26th, which is almost 2 full months, at least a month and a half. They're second in the MLB still, going into the All-Star break with runners in scoring position, second in the MLB in average with runners in scoring position. They played the two hottest teams in the MLB last week. Okay, so they played Boston, and Boston was on a 6-game win streak coming in, and now they're on a 10-game win streak. Before that, they played Detroit, who was the best team in baseball, and they lost 2 of 3. All shucks. Um, but they're still only a game and a half out of a wild card spot. And even other teams like the Tigers, who are on a 4-game losing streak as of right now, the Dodgers, who have lost 7 out of their last 10, the Dodgers, and also lost 6 straight at a time, the Yankees, who lost 6 straight at a time and slipped into a wild card spot, and the Phillies, who have lost 6 out of their last 10. That was before the result of the San Diego series on Sunday, so that could have changed. But um, they're all having a bad stretch too, and this is just another example of that. The Rays are just having a bad stretch as well. Theirs is just a little bit worse in that they've only won 2 out of their last 10, and they've only won 3 out of their last 12, but it's just a dry spell. It's just they're just not winning games right now. It's a 162 game season. You're going to have ups and downs. They've certainly had ups, and this is just a down. See, part of me in this argument sides with the overrated side because, again, if it were Aranda, Mangum, and Simpson who were the ones that were struggling, I would say they're young. It is what it is. They're going to get better. but it's not. It's Diaz, Lau, Josh Lowe, and Jose Caballero, I guess you can throw in there, but not really, and Junior Caminero. Um, but I still would side more with the underrated. And there are arguments both ways here. You know, they swept the Mets. Okay, great, but the Mets were doing poorly at the time. They destroyed the Tigers in 2 of 3 in mid-June. Okay, but the Tigers were also not necessarily doing well at the time, and they've also been known to be up and down over the course of the season, especially, as it relates to their starting pitching, because they have two, like, top level talents and then not much after that. Um, the Rays swept the Royals, okay, but the Royals are not necessarily a good team. But they only gave up 1 run in that entire series, all right. But the Royals don't put up runs. You could go back and forth. But I think I would side more with the underrated side because I think you have more confidence in the veterans, at least Yandy Diaz and Brandon Lau to get it together and start hitting better. Junior Caminero is a question mark, but I think that he'll start hitting better. But I think that it is just a dry spell and they'll get over it. But they need to get some momentum back, and that needs to start today. And we'll talk a little bit about that towards the end when I'm kind of previewing their week ahead. I know it kind of is stupid, given the recent stretch for the Rays to name a highlight hitter and a primetime pitcher, but you can't overlook some of the players that have been having really good um, weeks, more than a week, seasons with the Rays. So the highlight hitter is Jonathan Aranda. Um, this is a tough one. I think Chandler Simpson deserves an honorable mention for having a 380 average in his last 15 games and having the 12-game hit streak, as well as being fifth in the MLB in stolen bases, despite not being in the MLB a good chunk of this year, being in the minors. I still think he should have been called up last year. Maybe the Rays make the postseason if Chandler Simpson's in the lineup. Um, Maybe he doesn't even wind up in the MLB, but he winds up in Durham. He ended last year in Montgomery, who won the championship in Double A. Um, and then I also think they should have called Jake Mangum up last year too, but whatever. He was in Durham and should have been called up last year when the outfield couldn't hit anything. Um, But no, your highlight hitter is Jonathan Aranda because it's hard to overlook in his last 7 games. The 414 average, the OPS of 1.073. He's batting 377 with runners in scoring position this season, which is tied for 6th in the MLB. The Rays, remember, could not hit for anything with runners in scoring position last year. This season, they are 2nd with runners in scoring position in terms of average. Jonathan Aranda leads the way in that category. He is 6th in the MLB. 377 is nothing to sneeze at. He has been fantastic all season long. Very consistent, and you hope it continues. Remember, last year Rays fans didn't even want him on the roster, so they wanted him gone. I didn't agree with that because he was still a young player last year. Give him some time. I think the same thing could be said if, Chandler Simpson or Jake Mangum weren't having good seasons either. I think the same can be said for Junior Caminero now. Give him a little bit of time. The sky isn't necessarily falling, it's just a slump. You just hope that he gets it together, but give him a little bit of time. Jonathan Aranda has just been doing fantastic recently, and hopefully continues. Um, he might even be one of the leading candidates for MVP. You know he's not going to win it because of Aaron Judge and Cal Raleigh, but he might wind up being, a top 5 choice for MVP when all is said and done at the end of the year. The primetime pitcher, I'll make this kind of quick because there haven't been a lot of good pitching performances as of recently. But you got to shout out Joe Boyle. Since his return in the 2 games that he's pitched 9 total innings. Probably should have pitched more in the last game at the very least. Um, the ERA is at 2, which isn't really anything super impressive, but it's still pretty good. His batting average against, I think, is the better stat, .156. He has a whip of .89. if you let the guy start and throw more than 60 pitches, I think he might wind up going 6 or 7 innings at some point. And they tried it last year with Tyler Alexander as being the bulk guy, which is what Joe Boyle kind of is this year. But Tyler Alexander was moved to the bulk guy spot after the opener because he was inconsistent in his starting pitching. In the 3 games that he's pitched in this season, Joe Boyle's been fine. Let him start. If Drew Rasmussen really isn't going to throw that many innings, do what you did last season. Move him to the bullpen as sort of a bulk reliever. And then have, like a multi-inning reliever. Like have Joe Boyle throw 6 innings and then bring Drew Rasmussen to throw 2 and then lose 2-1 because that's what they do these days. Or in an ideal world, then you throw in Pete Fairbanks in a 4-3 game and he shuts the door. They threw in Pete Fairbanks in a 4-3 game the other day, and that wound up being 5-4 last week. So that's it. That's your primetime pitcher, Joe Boyle. Get this man on the mound to start a game. Just let's see. What can you do? Let's look ahead right now. So next time I'm filming an episode of this should be late July. Should be the 27th or 28th. That's when something should come out. We'll see about that. But I'll just preview the next few series. There's a 3-game series against Baltimore. That is starting today. There's a 3-game series against the Chicago White Sox. Then there's an off day, which the Rays haven't had many of lately before the All-Star break. And then there's a 3-game series against Cincinnati, Baltimore, Chicago White Sox, Cincinnati Reds. Here is the goal the bar that I will set for the team. In those 3 series, which is a total of 9 games, you've got to win 6 of them. And you can't lose a series. Those teams have a combined winning percentage of .436. Baltimore and Chicago are 2 of the worst 3 teams in the American League. By winning percentage, by whatever metric you want. They're Chicago White Sox especially. They're the worst team in the American League, and they're probably going to finish there. .436. That's a combined winning percentage. Cincinnati is doing a little bit better than the other 2. They have the same record as the Rays, 50 and 37 or 47. If you lose even one of those series, you should not be buying at the deadline at all, unless you're still somehow within half a game of a playoff spot. The trade deadline is going to be after the Yankees series. Maybe, well, I don't know when the final game of that series happens, but it'll be maybe even during that series. Yeah, the final game of that series is at 105. So the trade deadline should be like right as that game is wrapping up, or like maybe a little bit later. Assuming it's still at 4 o'clock. I haven't checked that yet. I don't know. They change the rules every year. You have to take 2 of 3 versus Baltimore. You have to prove that you can beat Baltimore in a series because they've had the Rays number all year, and I am tired of the stupid Baltimore Orioles fans mooing when Colton Cowser, who has had the Rays number this year, does anything. That is such a stupid thing to dress up as a cow. I like the little fun things, but that is just dumb. You just you just pulled part of his name and then made it into like a whole thing, which is just dumb. I don't know. Baltimore fans are cringy anyway. You've got to. I think they should sweep the White Sox. You got to at least win 2 of 3, and you should win 2 of 3 against Cincinnati, even though they have the same record. I know they have the same record, but if you can't prove that you're better than Cincinnati, how are you going to convince anybody in the front office or anybody on, who's a Rays fan that they're better than whoever they would face in the postseason? You've got it. That's a litmus test right there. And then they face another one the next week against the Yankees. They should win 7 of 9 in this stretch. if they are good. Otherwise, it might even just be worth watching the Durham Bulls for the rest of the season. This part of the schedule is a gift for the Rays. And then if you look after that, let's see who they play next. They play the Yankees. We know that. That's a 4-game series. Then they go out west. Well, they play the Dodgers at home first. Then they go out west. They play the Angels. Okay. About 500. They play Seattle. Good team. Litmus test. Probably a team that they're going to be fighting for that last wild card spot with at the time. Then they play the Athletics again, who they should beat this time. Then they play San Francisco, who's hot and cold. Then the rest of August, the Yankees, only 2 games in that series. St. Louis, also kind of middle of the pack. The Guardians, who are hot and cold, but mostly cold. And the Nationals, who are cold all the time, always. So it should be a good August, but it has to start with a good July, end of July, because the beginning of this month sucked. But you need to start winning some games because the deadline is coming up, and if they can't convince anybody that they should be buyers at the deadline, then they're probably going to be sellers. And you don't want to see that because there is a lot of potential there for the team to make a postseason run either this year or next year. But some of the players that have been weighing the team down, like Yandy Diaz as of late, but I wouldn't even want to trade Yandy Diaz, but they might. You never know. There was some talk last year at the deadline about him being traded to the Yankees. That wound up not happening, but um, maybe Josh Lowe gets traded away. You just never know. Anyways, that's going to be it for this one. Let's hope in about a week and a half I'm sitting here and talking about the Rays having won 6 or 7 of their 9 games. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and peace out, broskies.